At a time when more than 300 serving soldiers have approached the Supreme Court with the appeal that the Armed Forces Special Powers Act not be diluted, NDTV has learned that the centre is in fact considering a significant dilution to one of the most controversial clauses. The phrase "even causing of death" is being removed, possibly in a paragraph which describes when a soldier can open fire in disturbed areas in the northeast or in Jammu and Kashmir. This, some say, will reduce instances when soldiers shoot to kill. The centre hopes the use of force will now be more proportionate. My colleague Sunil Prabhu broke the story and joins us now. Sunil, what is the specific part of this of the proposed changes which will create the maximum impact, because AFSPA has been controversial for so many reasons?
That's right, Vishnu. In fact, if you ask people in terms of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, many in the Northeast would ideally like it to be completely removed. Well, what's the Home Ministry's proposal as a draft cabinet note is to actually remove in the Section 4, which is the special powers to the armed forces, a clause which allows us that causing to death, so that, as you rightly said, a proportionate use of force. The other, of course, is a specific provision for seizing vehicles, allegedly those by terrorists, so as to ensure that provision is available for the armed forces to stop and to interrogate people whom they suspect in disturbed areas as possible terrorists. The other issue, of course, is where there are excesses taking place. There is no proposal of a grievance. Now there will be, where people complain, there will be a grievance committee. They will look into the matter, and then, of course, an advisory body which will look into this. They've also made it clear that this will no more be just confined to union territories. It will be to states, because states like Arunachal Pradesh, which were initially union territories, have now become states. So by and large, a lot of changes that have taken place. This is, of course, controversial because, as you rightly said, it comes at a time when the armed forces are very categorical and clear that they need to have the special powers. Removing that causing to death will mean proportional representation. Doesn't specify exactly about the possibility of shoot to kill. But we'll have to wait and watch. This is an election year, whether the government has the resolve to
look at this very, very closely. I just want to bring in my panelists at this stage. Aishwarya Bhatti, advocate in the Supreme Court. In fact, she is representing the 300 plus soldiers and officers of the Indian Army who've gone to the Supreme Court with the plea that, look, please do not dilute the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, because the armed forces, the Army specifically, needs legal protection to do their jobs. Colin Gonzalez, senior advocate and human rights lawyer, joins us as well. Lieutenant General D.S. Huda, the former Northern Army commander, also, and Gohar Gilani, the journalist, will be joining us in a few moments from now. General Huda, let me come to you first. What do you make of this proposal which suggests that the phrase "even causing of death" will be removed? In other words, there would likely be a greater encouragement of the proportionate use of force by the army in these disturbed areas. What do you feel of this suggestion?
No, Vishnu, we always use proportionate force. I mean, minimum force is always a principle that the army has followed. But I just fail to understand, if you're facing a Pakistani terrorist, are we saying there are going to be issues about whether you shoot to kill him? This is completely disregarding the situation on ground. Till 2017, we've had more foreign terrorists killed in Jammu and Kashmir than local terrorists. What are the numbers of civilians who are getting killed? So I don't know what is triggering this. 2017 was the worst year for civilians killed in Jammu and Kashmir in terrorist operations. The number is 50. So what has triggered this? And the timing of this is absolutely unfortunate. There are more than 700 army men who've gone to the courts. We can say, I hear words like mutiny and ill discipline, and people are writing about that. We must go to the basic reason as to why they have gone to court. and they've gone to court because they are concerned about what is happening.
Okay.
And what are they demanding? They are not saying condone criminal behavior. What they are saying is don't harass us, don't act on frivolous complaints, and don't sit in judgment on excessive force.
Okay. I see what you're suggesting, and I'll come back to you in a moment. But Aishwarya Bhatti, you're representing these petitioners in the Supreme Court. Is it not correct that of the hundreds who've actually signed on and have appealed to the Supreme Court, 107 of these personnel who were commanded by a colonel who was booked by the CBI for an alleged fake encounter are among the signatories? And in this particular case, some reports suggest that this particular unit with this colonel was named in an FIR for the killing of a 12-year-old child in Imphal in 2009. So isn't it people who've been accused of a very major crime actually now attempting to go to the Supreme Court, or they've gone to the Supreme Court, some would say, to cover up from the crimes which they may have committed?
No, I don't believe that, Vishnu. I don't think this is any attempt to cover up. If 100-odd soldiers are and officers are indeed from the unit of that one particular officer, nothing turns on it. In fact, they would have probably seen the prosecution and persecution that their comrade was facing, and that would have motivated them. That would have, in fact, they would have been alive to the reality even more than others who would not have seen. So I don't think anything turns on it. Article 32 is available to all, and there's no dilution for soldiers and officers also. And nothing turns on anybody belonging to any unit. The issues that are raised are extremely serious. Like General Huda pointed out, the issues that our petition raises is not about fundamental rights of the soldiers or officers. It is about, laying down the contours of protection under Armed Forces Special Powers Act very clearly. Because so that the army knows what are the operational realities, army knows how they are to operate. And let me also tell you, Vishnu, no other, leave alone the autocratic countries, of course, there the level that the army operates on is much higher. But even the democratic countries, there is a concept of sovereign power and sovereign use of authority. The functions of the army are always protected under that. And on this development that is happening, I am not really sure of what is happening, but any dilution on the protection is not going to augur well for the integrity and security of the country, specifically when in operational areas. This is not, we are not talking about peacetime situations. These are areas which are declared as disturbed areas where there is proxy war, insurgency. The other side does not follow any law. The other side has no foundations of human rights, etc. It is a very, very, volatile situation there, and you can't be not saying that, you give the soldier a gun in the hand, which one trigger, the entire magazine is finished, but you say that you don't have right to kill.
Okay,
and army already operates in terms of the contours of do's and don'ts, which are there which are recognized in the Constitution Bench judgment of Naga People's Movement.
Okay, one second, Aishwarya, I'll come back to you. Mr. Gonzalez, you've been hearing these arguments. Assuming that this draft proposal, and it's a very serious proposal, does go through, those words are removed, perhaps as a means to encourage, a more proportionate use of force. Is it a step that you would welcome? Because if you look at the words in AFSPA as it agrees right now, it seems to almost encourage shoot to kill in situations like this.
Well, Vishnu, it's not really the proportionality of the action which is the core of the army officers' petition in the Supreme Court. Although I agree that proportionality should exist and you shouldn't kill a man if you can apprehend him. But the real reason why the army officers have gone to court is because they want extension of immunity. That's the critical issue. Today, the army officers have extensive immunity. If they are engaging in an official operation, they are completely immune from attack. If, for example, if they are in an operation and a person accidentally passes by and they kill him, it's quite possible that you could say that immunity covers them as well. What they are saying actually, these army officers, is that if they have a case of fake encounter, which is the present case of large numbers of fake encounters, and these colonels and others are being charged for fake encounter, where the CBI has found that these people were apprehended, they were in possession of the security forces, and they were killed in cold blood. They want immunity not only for their official actions, but they want immunity for actions which are completely outside their official actions, which is murder in cold blood. Take a man, take him to the barracks, torture him, kill him, throw his body, and then tell everyone it was an encounter. That is the immunity that they are seeking from the Supreme Court. If we are in an AFSPA area, whatever we do, we should not be questioned, and the Supreme Court should not allow investigation by the CBI and prosecution by the CPI as long as we are in AFSPA area. We want absolute immunity. That is what they seek.
Aishwarya, in fact, in July 2016, right, the Supreme Court, looking into this case, which was brought in by the Judicial Execution Victim Families Association versus the Union of India, ultimately decided that cases of quote-unquote extrajudicial killings need to be looked at. 1,528 cases of the killings of citizens must be inquired into. Isn't this a process that you would actually welcome? Because if seeking justice is what I'm sure you believe is the basic goal over here, isn't this something that you would also welcome? I understand you're saying that AFSPA is important, but within these encounters, isn't there a possibility that some of them could have been fake encounters, some of them could have been bad people, and that people who've lost their lives, their families want justice?
Absolutely, Vishnu. I mean, nobody is running away from that. General Huda also pointed out this. I'm surprised that Mr. Gonsalves, who's already filed an intervention in my petition, has not even bothered to read the petition. But he would not have missed these points. We have very categorically said that nobody is trying to protect any criminal activity or any malafide or even any mens rea. There is an intention that is necessary. What is important is if there is in bona fide action, malafide action, no protection. Bona fide action has to be protected and indiscriminate FIRs cannot be launched. Even under the AFSPA, procedure is already is existing that FIRs are lodged and without names of officers and soldiers if it is happened during an encounter or during an operation, then name of the officer or the soldier is not there, and only after sanction from a central government can that name be added. If the sanction is given or refused, that itself is subject to judicial scrutiny. But you can't have your soldiers and officers facing indiscriminate FIRs by vested people.
Okay.
And let me tell you, Vishnu, the system that Army has a parallel, robust and dynamic system of investigation, trial and sentencing. Nobody wants to protect anybody, but you can't, just because a few soldiers or few officers may have erred, you can't put the entire lot in one,
one second.
And, question them on their bona fide actions. That creates an issue.
Okay, I know General Huda has a comment to make. General, I'll come to you in a minute, but Gohar Gilani also joins us. Gohar, isn't it a fact that today in Kashmir, the army faces a situation which is unprecedented? On the one hand, they have to fight against terrorists. On the other hand, they have to take on stone pelting mobs. They're confronted by stone pelting mobs. They can't take them on per se. In a situation like this, with the previous state government filing FIR against FIR against officers who were not involved in anything wrong in many cases, isn't it a problem for the army to do what it is supposed to do, prevent terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir?
Mr. Vishnu, good evening first of all. I just want to go back a little and give the context to it and context to the entire story, and that is the AFSPA, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, came into force in first in only those areas which are closer to the line of control, and it was somewhere around July 1990, and then it came into force in the Kashmir Valley only, and strangely and interestingly, it was also extended to Jammu, which was peaceful, and it was already by 2001. And the thing, the perception on the ground in Kashmir is, why can't it first be lifted from Jammu, where there are no militant attacks, there is no problem at all, and also we have seen the protests in 2008, 2010, and 2016, and mostly in those protests were, countered by J&K police and the CRPF, which do not come under this umbrella of AFSPA. And the history tells us the last 28 years that not a single soldier of Jammu and Kashmir police or the CRPF has been punished for committing those crimes or killing people or using brute force against civilian population. So it's what people here are saying is that the armed forces enjoy immunity anyway, whether they come under the umbrella of Armed Forces Special Powers Act or not. That is one thing. And coming to your question, the thing is it's a question to ask: why should the Indian Army handle protests, which is actually the job of the Jammu and Kashmir police, which every analyst in New Delhi says is capable
in the middle of protests.
Is capable enough.
The problem, they can't. They're not trained to handle protests. They don't have shields and batons.
Absolutely. And then we have cases like the Pathribal, we have cases like Matsil and Gandarbal, where we have not seen, people have not seen justice being done. Even if you claim or say that it's only 100 odd soldiers who have erred, but the problem is the justice has not been seen being done by any Kashmiri. That's where the mistrust comes in.
Okay. I want to get one last comment from General Huda. General, how will this work on the ground? Tell us, as a soldier, the army is trained, army jawans and officers, when they're given the order to shoot, they're given the order to shoot to kill. This is the basis of the training which they have received. In an encounter type situation or in a situation where they feel they are attacked, how exactly does one use quote unquote proportionate use of force? I mean, the AK-47 is not a proportionate weapon. It's not designed to be that.
Vishnu, let me just, before that, comment on a couple of statements that have been made. We throw around these words, very large number of fake encounters. Officers want immunity from even criminal acts, irrespective of whatever they've done. Gohar talked about the Machal encounter. And in the Machal encounter, we found, I was the army commander, it was fake. And 5 people, including a colonel, were sentenced to life imprisonment. Now, if they've gone to a higher court and got some kind of a relief, which is also temporary, I mean, that's a judicial process. The army has nothing to do with the Armed Forces Tribunal at all. It's completely independent. As far as nobody has been punished till now, these figures have been given out by the army. There are 153 people who've been punished for human rights violations. So let's not just bandy these things around and say, nothing is being done. And as far as immunity is concerned, Vishnu, immunity is available against prosecution to every public servant, to the police. You cannot prosecute a public servant without central government sanction. That exists everywhere. It's not only under AFSPA. And finally, coming to your point about, a soldier with a weapon in his hand, and you tell him when somebody is firing at you and trying to kill you, and you tell him, buddy, you will only fire 2 rounds or 3 rounds or 4 rounds, because if you fire 20, then it's not proportionate use of force. I mean, these are absolutely arguments which have no connection with what is the situation on ground.
Okay.
It is just not going to work.
All right. I'd like to thank all of you very much for joining us. But one way or the other, if there is an attempt to dilute AFSPA, it needs to take into account the reality of the situation on the ground. It also needs to take into account what is happening in the Supreme Court and the fact that there are inquiries and investigations taking place. Will a balance actually be found? I'd like to thank all of you very much for joining us. Completely out of time. I'll be back tomorrow at 10 p.m. Till then, goodbye.